Hello guys, Salt here. Welcome to the video. Today we're doing a 500 subscriber special video, and we're going to be looking at the Embolist. The Embolist is a secondary weapon, and I had originally thought to do my like subscriber milestone videos as kind of like joke weapons or weapons that were like really bad. Like the first one I did at 100 subs, I did the Stug, which, you know, that one you definitely can't make Steel Path viable. It's pretty bad. The Embolist, I could not make Steel Path viable for a long time, but unfortunately I have made it Steel Path viable. But because I said I was going to do it in the first subscriber special, I'm actually going to do it anyway. So we'll get into the Embolist, aka the can of Febreze air freshener. So the Embolist is a secondary. It sprays out Febreze air freshener at enemies. Go into the upgrade here. Interesting things about the Embolist is that it starts with Toxin Innate. But the unfortunate thing with it only having Toxin as the innate is that it's a status-focused weapon. So if you look, it has very low crit chance, very low crit multiplier. So we're going to completely forego critical, and we're going to go all status. Now, the problem with having Toxin as an innate is that it doesn't really matter, because the way the game reads elements is from left to right. And so, like normally, if you have Toxin innate, you can not have a Toxin mod. You can just have a cold mod, and you can make your viral. But because the game reads it from left to right, it doesn't work that way. If I try to put cold here to mix with the Toxin, that's the innate, that would make viral. But as soon as I put my fire mods over here, because it reads left to right, it's going to try to mix the fire with the cold, and it would be blast Toxin. So even though this weapon starts with Toxin, we're basically going to build it out as if it just started with nothing, unfortunately. So, this weapon, when you shoot it, it does, when it hits an enemy or it reaches its maximum range, it does like a 1 meter radius, like AoE effect. It's very low damage, the AoE, and it's not really worth building for the AoE. And so we're not really worried too much about that. Just view it as extra damage. It's not really too great. And that's really it for the interesting things about it. So now we're going to go into the mods. The mods are going to be Galvanized Diffusion for multi-shot, Galvanized Shot for status chance and direct damage per status type affecting the target. Remember, Galvanized Shot does not work on AoE damage, but that's okay because we don't really care about its AoE. We're going to be directly hitting enemies anyway. So, Galvanized Shot, Hornet Strike for flat damage, Lethal Torrent for fire rate and multi-shot, Pistol Pestilence, which is our Toxin 60/60, and Frostbite, which is our cold 60/60. These are going to make viral. And then we're going to use 2 heat mods. We're going to use Scorch, which is the 60/60 for heat. And we're going to use Primed Heated Charge, which is the primed version of Heated Charge for more heat. That way we increase our heat weighting a little bit. If you don't have Primed Heated Charge, you can just use regular Heated Charge. That's fine too. And then unfortunately, the Toxin that we get innately is going to see the viral here. It's going to see that we put Toxin here, and it's going to try to mix with that Toxin. So it increases our weighting a little bit higher on viral, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's an okay weighting here. The heat is slightly higher than viral. It's not too bad. So it's pretty decent. In the Exilus slot, we're going to use Ruinous Extension, which is almost going to double the range of the Embolist. So it's a very, very good mod to have here. And then in our Arcane slot, we're going to be using Cascadia Flare. And Cascadia Flare is going to give us 480% flat damage. So typically in the Arcane slots, like Merciless or Deadhead are usually the best options for primaries or secondaries, really. And But the thing is, with Merciless and Deadhead, they only stack to 360% flat damage. So obviously 480% is better. Now, the reason we don't always use Cascadia Flare is because Cascadia Flare, the stacks, they fall off pretty quickly. And they need to be, you need to be doing heat status effects to be applying these stacks. And all the stacks are kind of counted separately. And so if you're not pumping out heat procs, Cascadia Flare actually falls off pretty quickly. Now, the fortunate thing about the Embolist is that it does pump out heat procs. So we're able to use that little bit stronger arcane of Cascadia Flare instead of Merciless or Deadhead that we normally use. So that is pretty much it for the Embolist build here. I don't think there was really too much else with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a 10-minute Kuva survival. We'll see how this does. Going to, we might also do a Lua conjunction, but I'm not really sure. This is a weak weapon. I don't know if it'll even get through Thraxes. We'll see. So because we're not mixing this with any kind of external factors, we're not mixing it with Warframe abilities that do damage. We're not mixing it with pets putting statuses, anything like that. We're just testing the weapon by itself. Because we're doing that, we're just going to do this on a Naros with no Archon shards. No mods on the Naros that affect weapon damage. No arcanes on the Naros that affect weapon damage. And with a Sentinel with no Sentinel weapon and no mods on the Sentinel that affect weapon damage. So let's get into the Kuva survival and start Febrezing those stinky Grineer. So I'm going to cast my 4 to double my armor, and that'll be the last time I use an ability. So I built this weapon out like 2-ish years ago, and when I first built it out, I didn't build it properly. I built it like kind of halfway okay, and I thought it was absolutely horrible. I mean, it's still not a good weapon, but it's actually Steel Path viable, unfortunately, nowadays, because of the build. But at the time, I had not made it Steel Path viable, so I had assumed it was as weak as, like, the Stug. But as you can see, it's not as weak as the Stug. It does Febreze down these enemies pretty quickly. As you can see, these Grineer are kind of flailing around like they don't want to smell better. They're afraid of the Febreze. It actually kind of sounds like a can of Febreze, too, as you're shooting it. But during the 100 subscriber milestone, I had said I was going to do the Embolist next. So when I whipped it out this morning and went over the build and found out it was kind of Steel Path viable, I mean, it's not good, but it is kind of Steel Path viable, I was like, oh, I thought it was going to be a funny meme weapon, but it actually works now. But I had said I was going to do it, so I figured I was going to do it this time. So let's head over to where the life supports are. And this is actually doing better, unfortunately, than some of the weapons that I had, like, seriously made. Like, I think I'll have to review, like, the Euphona video, because I think the Euphona was doing worse than this. Although I don't know how this is going to do against the Acolyte. It's probably going to do absolutely horrible. So yeah, we hit 500 subs yesterday, or last night. I'm super excited about that. I didn't think I was going to be at this point. I had told myself, I said, Probably for the first year, I'm not really going to have anyone. I'm going to be making videos for myself. Maybe they'll be at like 20 or 30 views each. And maybe after a year, it'll kind of get bigger. And, you know, surprisingly, 2.5 months later, I'm at 500 subs. So I'm super excited. I'm super thankful for everyone that that watches. There's an Eximus here. Eximuses, it's not going to do good damage against Eximuses, but you're going to be applying so many fire procs that just through pure attrition, the Eximuses will die. Pure attrition of 200 fire procs, the Eximuses will die. Now, when we get to the Acolyte, that's what I'm afraid of, because the Acolyte you can't stack statuses on. They only stack to 4. So the Acolyte may live forever. We'll see. Here's an Eximus right here. Let's get his fire stacks up. He's at 50 stacks right now. Now he's at 100 stacks. He's almost at 200. He's at 200 stacks, and he's dead. So we have no problem with Cascadia Flare maintaining the 480. So that's one of the things with Cascadia Flare. It's a really good arcane, but some as in most weapons can't maintain the 480 damage numbers. And if you can't, you might as well just use Merciless or Deadhead. But this weapon can. But as you saw, though, I lost the entire stack of Flare. As soon as I went for that life support, I lost the entire stack of Flare. So that's why Flare, you need to be pumping out heat procs, and it's because every single proc is counted separately. So it doesn't like go down by one proc at a time. It goes down by the entire, or not the entire. It goes down by when they were applied. I'm getting ragdoll around. Let me try to get this Acolyte into somewhere a little bit cleaner to fight him. Oh, he's gonna do the teleport me to him thing. I think this Acolyte needs a little bit of Febreze. Spray him right in the face. Alright, we are almost halfway done with his shields. It's not a good sign. We are more than halfway done with the shields. I am getting beat up, and I probably will die, actually. I don't want to use any abilities. Like, I don't want to put my Gloom on, so I probably will die here. We'll see. I have a lot of other ways on my Inaros to passively get health, but I don't want to use any abilities. So I may die here without abilities. Hey, if I die, the Acolyte will go away. I mean, that's a way of clearing Acolytes with the Embolist. That's the meta right there. So, yeah, I did die. Okay. I'm going to res myself here. So that was not very good against the Acolyte. Meaning horrible. Didn't help that Acolyte was just, like, teleporting me to him. I couldn't even, like, get away from him to do other things. So, let's hit these life supports in this room here. Oh, you know what? The something I should have went over. The Embolist does have 2 specific Embolist mods. And I did testing on both of them. One of them gives 200% mag size, and it gives you the... I'm trying to do this out of memory now. It gives you the Syndicate effect of Blight. And the Syndicate effect of Blight, what that does... There says there's another one up. Oh, no, there doesn't. The Syndicate effect of Blight, when you get a certain amount of affinity, it explodes, and it puts viral status on everything around you. You can't really rely on that being a viral spreader, though, because it doesn't happen super often. You also get a 30-second buff of 10% movement speed, I believe. And it restores energy, I believe. I think it restores energy when it procs, like 25%. So it sounds really good, but it doesn't proc super often because you have to wait for the buff to end for it to proc again. So it's a 30-second buff, and then once that buff is done, it takes a few seconds for you to get the affinity to charge it up. So that's only going to really happen like every 30 to 40 seconds. So that's why I'm saying you can't rely on that as being your viral spreader. You can't rely on that for like restoring a crap load of energy. So it's just more of an added effect. So the actual effect of that mod would be the 200% magazine capacity, which is not really needed on this weapon. You don't really need that, so it's kind of dead. It's a dead mod, that one. Just ran out of ammo here. I'm going to use an ammo pad to get some more ammo. It's the first time I had to use an ammo pad, but it's kind of expected with this weapon. It does low damage, and it's not going to be getting a lot of kills per ammo. Oh, thanks for the follow, Silent. Hey, how are you doing today? I don't know if this is the first video or first stream you're watching. If it is, it's a little bit unfortunate because I'm kind of doing like a joke weapon today with the Embolist. I'm doing pretty good. Doing some frame crafting. Which frame are you working on? I'm going to hit this life support here. So we're almost at 10 minutes. So at 10 minutes, we're gonna head out. And I won't do a Lua conjunction on this video just because this is kind of like a, I don't want to say it's a joke video. It's a subscriber special, but it's a weak weapon. I thought this was going to be like a funny weapon to use, like the Stug. That was going to be absolutely horrible, but it's actually not that horrible. It's a pretty decent weapon. I got my weapon stolen. There it is. That is not my weapon. That is a power cell. There it is. There is my Febreze air freshener. Okay, let's head to extraction. So in 10 minutes, I got 291 kills. Now, that is weirdly a lot better than some of the really bad weapons we've checked. So the Embolist, I created a Frankenstein this morning, apparently, and it is now Steel Path viable. It's not a good Steel Path viable weapon, but it is technically Steel Path viable. It will kill Steel Path enemies, except for the Acolyte. Absolutely garbage against the Acolyte. Oh, nice. I love Ash. I have a really nice Ash build. I have not built out Baruch yet, and Wisp, my build that I want to make with Wisp is going to require 2 Umbral Formas, and I'm waiting to get some more of those. So I vicariously made my Wisp through my wife. So my wife plays Wisp, and I helped her with her Wisp build. But I don't have a Wisp build myself because I'm waiting for some Umbrals for them. Yeah, on my channel, I do videos on like weapons or warframes or pets. And last night, we just hit 500 subscribers. So I was like, okay, let me do kind of like a fun video. And for my fun videos, I usually pick like really weak weapons that I would normally not make a video on. Like for 100 subs, I did the Stug. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do the Embolist this time because the Embolist was a weapon that was really bad. But I actually made a decent build. Decent as in it's still bad, but it's not as bad as it was. So we'll go over the build one more time. And I also want to go over those mods, those weird mods that go on the Embolist themselves. So the Embolist has Toxin Innate. But the unfortunate thing when you have a pure status weapon is that the game reads elements left to right. And the innate elements on a weapon, if you kind of want to view where they are, they're right here. So it'll read it left to right, up and down, and so the innate sits right here. And so The unfortunate thing is if I wanted to use that innate toxin to make viral, so I would put cold here, and let's say I wanted to put heat, it wouldn't work. The heat would try to mix with the cold, it would make blast, and then I would have toxin here. So even though this weapon has innate toxin, and I would like not to have to put a toxin mod on to make viral, I still have to do it. So even though it has innate toxin, we're pretty much building it as if it didn't. So first mod slot, it's going to be multi-shot. Second one here is going to be galvanized shot. Hornet strike for flat damage. Lethal torrent for fire rate and multi-shot. Pistol pestilence and frostbite. Those are 60/60 mods for toxin and cold. That's going to make our viral. And then we're going to use 2 mods for heat. That way we can increase our heat rating, so it'll be a little bit closer to where viral is, because we want a higher heat rating. It's almost at the same level as viral, unfortunately, but that's fine. And that's because that innate toxin also is trying to mix with the viral here. So that's just an unfortunate thing. The innate toxin almost hurts this weapon. So we have Scorch for the 60/60 heat, and we have Primed Heated Charge for just a large heat bonus. If you don't have Primed Heated Charge, you can use regular Heated Charge. And then in the Exo slot, we're going to be using Ruinous Extension. This is going to almost double the range of the Embolist. And for the Arcane, we're using Cascadia Flare for a 480% damage increase. Normally, we would use like Merciless or Deadhead, because Cascadia Flare requires a weapon to like really, really be pumping out heat procs. Now, the fortunate thing about the Embolist is that it does pump out heat procs, so we're very easily able to maintain that 480 with the Embolist. So that's the build for the Embolist. I would probably not... I mean, I would suggest getting it, building it, and getting mastery for it. But I would probably not suggest spending Forma into it, because this is not a good weapon. It did perform better than some of the really bad weapons I've tested. Like, I think it actually did better than the Euphona Prime, weirdly. But it's still not a great weapon. So I wouldn't suggest spending Forma into it, unless you just kind of want to make a fun meme weapon. That's fine, too. And then the 2... Let me go to a blank config here, and I'm going to show the 2 Embolist mods, because there are 2 specific mods for the Embolist. It's going to be Vile Discharge and Eroding Blight. So Eroding Blight is the one that gives you 200% magazine capacity. The weapon doesn't really need magazine capacity. It's kind of a weird choice for them to like do that on this weapon. So you don't really get much from that. And then Blight, what Blight does is once you get, I believe it's 1,000 affinity, it's going to do a radial explosion. Things in that radial explosion are going to have a viral proc applied, which is nice. But that radial explosion is only going to happen like once every 30 to 40 seconds. So you can't rely on it as being your viral spreader. It's going to restore 25% of your energy, which is nice. But again, that's only going to happen once every like 30 to 40 seconds. And it's going to increase your movement. It's going to give you a buff. So it's going to give you a buff for 30 seconds of 10% movement speed. It's nice, but it's not great. I don't think this is worth a mod slot on the weapon. And then Vile Discharge is the other one. This one seems very strong, but in testing it was not strong. So damage is accumulated up to 30,000. So as you're shooting, it's just going to count how much damage you're doing. And then once it's at 30,000, it's not going to save that damage anymore. So you'll have to alt fire to expend it. And you'll alt fire, it shoots a little sack, and the sack does like a big boost of damage. Now, something interesting about that sack is that one of these mods here, Galvanized Shot, the sack's damage with Galvanized Shot is multiplicative instead of additive. So Galvanized Shot on most weapons is additive, and it actually is additive on the Embolist itself, but on the Embolist's alt fire with Vile Discharge, it's multiplicative. However, even though it's multiplicative, even though it's supposed to be a good amount of damage, it's still a pretty low amount of damage. The other thing with the Embolist is you kind of want to keep it held, because it charges up its damage over an extremely small amount of time. It's like, I think in 0.6 seconds you'll be at max damage. But before that, like your first like 1 or 2 bullets coming out of the Embolist are going to be at 45% damage. And so by having to alt fire all the time to discharge your vial sack or whatever it's called. Every time you go to shoot it normally, your first 2 shots are going to be at like 45% damage. So it's kind of a hindrance to your really vial discharge. I don't like it. You can try it with vial discharge. If you wanted to use vial discharge, you'd probably put it over scorch, or you wouldn't use primed heated charge and you would put it over heated charge. It's going to lower your heat weighting. I think it's going to make your weapon worse. I don't think it's worth it, but you can try it. And that's pretty much it for the Embolist there. Again, I appreciate you guys' support. Thank you so much. If you liked the video, give it a like, and I appreciate it. You guys have a good day.